This is something that had been happening to me for a few months and only began to subside a couple of weeks ago, towards the end of October. I was walking home from school and my friend who I usually walked home with was sick this particular day, so I was alone. Part of my journey takes me down a dirt road which leads to my school. This road could get quite busy when parents were picking their kids up, but because I went to the canteen to get a drink and a snack before walking home, it was pretty deserted. It was nearing the end of August and at this time it was still light outside, but it was cold and the sun was beginning to set, casting vibrant orange hues across the sky. This dirt road didn't have much in the way of a sidewalk, something the school constantly and unsuccessfully petitioned for. Instead, there was just a thin strip of grass next to the dirt road on either side that all the kids walked on. Walking away from school, on the left-hand side, was a cornfield where corn grew taller than we all stood. On the other side was a ditch and a tree line. I was walking on the side with the tree line and the leaves had begun dying and falling off the trees. I was about a quarter of the way down the road, which took up the majority of my walk home, when I hear rustling on the leaves next to me. I look right and can't see anything, but creeped out, I pick up the pace. A bit later on, I hear something again and look into the trees. Nothing. Nothing was moving or making any noise now. I tried to rationalise what I was hearing as just an animal, but I was now super creeped. A few seconds passed when, again, for a third time, the crunch of leaves broke the silence to my right. I was quite terrified at this point, being alone on the road that's usually quite busy and hearing odd noises from the trees. I turned to look again, and that's when I saw a domestic black cat. This cat was completely black, and I almost didn't see it nestled in the darkness of the undergrowth. It had no visible collar and looked quite skinny and sickly, and I assumed it was a stray, and not being one for superstition, started heading over to the cat to shing it. As I got to the ditch, I lost my balance and stumbled momentarily. By the time I looked back towards the cat, it had gone. I mean, I stumbled for maybe half a second and the cat was nowhere in sight. I reasoned I couldn't see it due to its dark coat, and my sudden stumble startled it. I looked in the woods for about 5 minutes before deciding that I needed to head home, as my mum would be wondering where I was. Fast forward a bit and I'm at home. It's now about 8:30 and I'm relaxing in my room, reading a book. I was sat in silence and began to hear what I can only describe as an echoing meow from outside my bedroom window. It wasn't loud, probably just normal volume, but being sat in silence in my room, I caught the sound. I went over to my window, opened it, and looked out onto my front lawn. There, sat on the grass, in the darkness, was the same black cat as before. Worried about its well-being, I slowly moved from the window and ran downstairs, planning not to startle the cat. I looked out of the peephole and the cat had once again disappeared. I opened my door and ran onto the lawn, looking up and down our street. It had gone. My family had no cats or dogs either, so I find it hard to believe it had been startled by something. By this point, I didn't view this as being supernatural. I was just really concerned for this cat. I thought that perhaps it had been abused. That Saturday, I went to the local shelter to report the cat. I described it to the lady there, who filled out a report and told me no cats matching that description of colour, size and demeanour were reported missing in the area. That evening, I was again sat reading in silence. I glanced up at my clock and saw it was 2 AM. I hadn't realised it was so late and went to the bathroom to brush my teeth. My mum and dad had both gone to bed and the house was dark. This comes into play in a moment. After I brushed and came back into my room, I climbed into bed and turned off my bedside lamp. I'm laying in the dark and silence for about 5 minutes and I'm beginning to drop off when I hear scratching at my door. I opened my eyes and looked at my door, wondering if I heard it in my mind as I was dozing off. There it was again. I was definitely awake at this point and was more curious and scared as to what was making the scratching sounds. I stood up quietly and snuck over to the door. I swung it open and sort of lunged out into the hallway. It was dark and empty. Nothing was there. I flicked the light on and nothing seemed amiss. I decided I'd get a glass of orange juice and check the living room and kitchen whilst I was at it. I walked down the hallway, my bare feet slapping off the laminate flooring. I went downstairs and turned on the light. The living room was empty. I went towards the kitchen and as I flicked the light on, I noticed, sat on the kitchen side, next to the sink, the black cat. It saw me and it shot off the side as a cat would and ran into the darkness of the far end of the kitchen. I flicked the second light switch which illuminated that end of the kitchen and I couldn't see the cat. I was cautious as, if it was a stray, I didn't want it to attack me and I slowly edged towards where I thought it went. I couldn't see it. In fact, I didn't come across it at all. I paused for a moment and checked the doors and windows. They were all locked. It occurred to me that this cat had no way of entering, or for that matter, leaving my house. I searched in vain for a solid hour and never even detected the slightest movement out of the corner of my eye. I ended up retiring to bed and couldn't wrap my head around what had happened. I fell asleep much later on. So, the week just before Halloween, something happened to me that compelled me to share this story. We had an assembly at my school and we had this guy talking to us all about the history of the area. He had a slideshow of old antique pictures and one of them was a picture of one of the families that founded our town. They were all stood around this really old tractor and on the bonnet of the tractor was this cat. It looked the exact same as the cat I had been seeing, but this picture was over 100 years old, and as if that wasn't crazy enough, the farm's land covered the old dirt road I first encountered the cat on. I was gobsmacked to say the least, and kept all this quiet. I didn't bother trying to get a picture of the photo because there's no way for me to prove that that was the cat I saw. Hell, even I'm not 100% convinced. I have still been seeing this cat occasionally at the time of writing, though much less, and the occurrences haven't become any less creepy. I haven't managed to get a picture, or very close at all really, and based on the evidence I've seen so far, I believe it could be a ghost cat. This happened to me when I was 13. I'm 29 now, but what happened still affects me to this day. We lived in a quiet suburban neighbourhood near a large city in North America. I don't want to say where, as my parents still live there now. So it was like the early 2000s or maybe late 99 and the neighbourhood was really tight knit. This one night, all the neighbours on my street, it was quite a small street that led to a dead end, went out for a meal. This happened frequently, and so my mum and dad were invited too, and I was left home alone. This was no biggie. Mum had made me tea and I had a few movies to watch and had been home alone plenty of times before. This night, however, there had been heavy snows, so heavy in fact, the whole neighbourhood nearly postponed the meal. I can't remember exactly how high the snow went, but my mum and dad decided to go nonetheless. I was excited it was snowing. I don't know why, it just made the whole situation seem more adventurous, despite the fact that I probably wouldn't be leaving my couch for the evening. My mum and dad left, and my dad knew I had had tea but left me $10 to order a pizza if I felt like I needed one. And I took advantage and ordered one, and when it arrived I was snacking on it, watching my movies. I can't remember exactly what I was watching, but I was snug on my couch, almost drifting off, when I had the odd feeling of being watched. Our curtains were closed and our little street had no streetlights, so it was difficult to place this feeling, yet I couldn't shake it. I was facing away from the window and turned to look over. I couldn't see anyone out there, but noticed the curtains were slightly parted and rationalised this is what was giving me the feeling of being watched. I stood up, still feeling a bit strange, and closed the curtains. I sat back down on the couch and resumed my movie binge. After a few minutes, I still couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As I typed before, I'm no stranger to being left alone, so I couldn't explain it. I was beginning to get frustrated with this feeling. No matter what I did, how I rearranged my positioning, where I looked in the house, I still had this sixth sense mining away at the back of my mind. I stood up and looked through the peephole. It was dark, but I couldn't see anyone out there. I again rationalised that I was now overreacting and went to bed. I fell asleep quickly that night, at about midnight, and I woke a couple of hours later to my mum and dad's frantic calls of my name. I sleepily went to the top of the stairs and asked what was up. They both ran upstairs and embraced me in a hug. The police turned up not long after, and my parents showed the police what they had come home to. There were large boot prints in the snow, walking all over the property, up to the windows, on the side of the house, up to the door, and everywhere in between. Both the front and back doors, specifically around the locks, had sharp scratches around them that appeared to have been done by a knife. And then, probably most chillingly of all, were the words, "I see your son," written through the condensation of the window that had the curtains slightly open earlier. My parents said this looked fresh, though, and thought it had been done in the last 10 minutes or so as they arrived home. I was so creeped out seeing the boot prints and scratches myself. How had I not noticed anyone? Red flags were even raised and I didn't know. The police never arrested anyone. I doubt they even looked. I mean, they had nothing to go on. I don't know what kind of person was creeping on me from out in the snow, and I have no idea of his or her motives, but nothing like that ever happened again. I wonder if it could have been the pizza delivery guy, but I have no real reason to believe it was him. I struggled being left alone at home for ages after that, and our street even got streetlights fitted after the whole neighbourhood petitioned for them. I was a fairly innocent 15-year-old boy when this happened in Surrey, England. It was winter, and with that came the harsh winter weather. This year, back in my childhood, it had been a brutal winter, and during the opening weeks of January, my area was affected by a bout of snowstorms. Snow isn't common nor rare in the UK, so we were used to it as kids, but still got excited when it came. Because of the heavy snowfall and the effect it had on the local roadways, school was cancelled for a couple of days that year, and this happened on the first of those days. I woke up that morning to a phone call on our landline from my mate who lived around the corner from me. His name was Aaron. At first, I was in disbelief that school had been cancelled. It had never happened before, but after receiving a call from school saying so, I immediately got wrapped up in my winter coats and went round to Aaron's house in the snow. It was about 8:30 in the morning and he was getting in touch with a few other friends. It was no later than 9:30 when a group of about 4 of us went to the local park to have a snow fight. We expected it to be super busy as all the kids would now know school was cancelled, but the field was empty. The blanket of snow had only been disturbed by 2 or 3 other sets of footprints. As it turns out, everyone else had gone sleighing on the local golf course early on, and so we were the only ones there. The field was primarily rectangular in shape and open in nature. However, to the far right-hand corner, there was a tiny patch of 4 or 5 trees and some bushes, and a small stream made its way around the whole right-hand side and then off beneath a bridge that led towards housing. This comes into play later. We were put into doubles, teams of 2, and each started on one end of the field. We legged it to the centre like in a game of dodgeball, and the battle commenced. I hit Aaron square in the face, whereas Jake ploughed one right to my balls, and I was down for a few minutes whilst the other team pelted me with snowballs as Phil tried to defend me. At one point, Phil is down and I decide he can take one for the team and I'll sneak up on them in the bushes. I run over to them, ensuring I'm not seen whilst they're distracted with Phil, and work my way round to where the trees are. I compact snow in my hands several times until I had a small fortune's worth of snowballs, and then I crouched round the back side of this bush. I knelt down and felt something hard beneath the snow. When it's cold, things tend to freeze, so at first I ignored it. I was biding my time. It was really uncomfortable. I briefly looked down and tried shifting this thing. It wouldn't budge. I scraped the thin layer of snow away with my gloved hand. It was a boot. I lifted it up and let out an ear-piercing scream as snow from further down lifted, revealing a leg. My friends came rushing over, believing I'd fallen into the icy stream, and they all screamed when they saw it too. I couldn't not. I scraped away the snow from the top end, revealing a torso in a red jacket and a swollen, puffy blue face that looked like one big bruise. His skull was collapsed on one side. Aaron and Jake ran to the housing estate to get someone to phone the police on their landline, whilst me and Phil waited, a bloated corpse at our feet. The police and ambulance arrived soon after, and the woman they got to phone the emergency services came out to guard the body so we didn't have to. I later found out that the body was a local pub landlord. I forget his name, and he had been brutally attacked by his own son with a claw hammer. His son then dragged his dead father out into the field and left him in the bushes. Then it snowed. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. I often, even now, think about how sick that guy must have been to murder his own dad, and also think that, had it not been snowing, had I been in school that day, the pub landlord's body may have remained undiscovered for days, or maybe even weeks. Me and my girlfriend took time out between college and starting our careers to travel America for 3 years starting in 2004. We had a great trip with great experiences and great memories, and we met plenty of amazing people along the way, but there's one single isolated incident that put a completely disturbing mood on the whole trip. We had been travelling about a year at this point and were hiking a trail way up north on the border of Canada. It was late October and was freezing every night we set up camp. We were at a designated camping spot in the middle of this really well-known national park. It was empty apart from us, probably due to the time of year, and we lit a campfire, erected our tent, and got inside to snuggle for the night. My girlfriend fell to sleep well before me, and I did, eventually, drop off. I woke up to my girlfriend softly nudging me and quietly whispering my name. What? I replied, half asleep. Do you hear that? She sounded alert. What? I asked, still waking but confused. There it is again, she said. I leant up in my sleeping bag and listened. From near where the fire was crackling, you could hear it. A low, half-human, half-animalistic, guttural laugh. It's hard to pen down exactly how it sounded, but it still rings clear in my head, and even now, I totally believe it was beyond anything we can explain. It was grotesque, it was evil, and it was disturbing. We both sat, still with fear, and listened to this laughing creature drag itself around our camp. My girlfriend was clutching bear spray in her hands. Like a bear made that sort of noise, I thought, but didn't say anything, letting her take comfort in the bear spray. Everything had fallen silent. I mean, everything. The leaves, the wind, the insects. It was a surreal moment where I could even hear the blood coursing through my veins. Then, the tent began to indent with one long, crooked digit, pushing deep into the material. Then, the guttural laugh, except this time, it was right outside our tent. My girlfriend yelped and this thing, it laughed even louder. We both daren't move as the indent slowly moved back out. Then, the unthinkable, it started to talk. "Help me, blank. Please, quick, help," it said in a mimic of my girlfriend's voice before unleashing the guttural laugh. It knew my name. I looked over at my girlfriend, who was shaking violently now, and hot tears were rushing down her face. Her eyes were tightly shut. It wasn't her who spoke. "Please, blank," it pleaded in her voice. "Don't leave me out here to die." It was a mimic, but it seemed to be struggling. It sounded like my girlfriend, but as if she had had a stroke or something. It was her voice, but something was off. The guttural laugh came once more and continued off into the distance, as I can only assume this creature was leaving our area. We both sat unmoving all night, except for at one point when I deemed it safe enough to put my arm around my girlfriend and hold her close. The sun came up, but still, we didn't move until it was defined in the morning sky. I slowly unzipped the tent and cautiously walked out into the open. All around our tent and the campfire were clothed hoof prints. I'm not a pro on tracking, if I'm honest with you, but the number of hoof prints and the distance between two of them and the next two made it appear bipedal in the mud. We never saw anything visual and had no idea what it was until about 4 years after the event. Given the great time we had both had, we pushed it to the back of our minds, and my girlfriend brought it up years later. We had a quick search online and believe it could have been a Wendigo. I want to emphasise the could, as we never got a visual on the creature, but the locations and behaviours were similar. I'm sorry if this story came across as a bit vague, but this is the first time I've ever posted something like this, and really wanted to leave any real details such as names and locations out. Still though, I hope you enjoyed the story of the one truly creepy thing that happened to me. Back during the Christmas of 1999, the extended family on both mine and my husband's side had a lot of issues internally, and we both didn't want our families to ruin Christmas for our children, so on a bit of a whim, we decided to go camping over the holiday season. We set off about a week before Christmas and planned to stay until New Year's Day. We set off from our London home and drove towards Cornwall, a place my husband had been on many camping holidays as a child. We had no set destination and were just going to go wherever the road led us. It sounds like a terrible idea, but we had become so fed up with our families, we just thought, fuck it, pardon my French. However, we never made it to Cornwall. We found a crudely written sign to a cheap campsite in Devon. We took the chance as the cheap ones are usually the most hospitable. We get there and it's basically a farmer's field with a shower block and 2 other caravans. This isn't unusual. A lot of farms have extra space set aside for campsites in the summer, and this one just happened to be still open during the winter. We speak to the landowner and he seems like a really genuine guy, and we choose a nice lot to the far end of the field, nice and private. We unpack and settle down and then have tea before turning in early, tired from the day's travel. The next day, we head into the local town just to do some sightseeing and to walk our dog at a local park. We ended up staying out and eating at a restaurant and returned to the campsite at about 8:30 PM, and there was another caravan in the centre of the field. It was an old American-style metallic caravan that had old shaggy tinsel and half-working fairy lights decorating it. It had a crudely written, hand-painted sign lent against it just saying, Santa's Grotto. Grotto was spelt wrong with only one T. We thought nothing of it at the time and assumed it was a cheap gimmick put on by the farmer over the festive period. We parked up at our caravan and turned in for the night. The next morning, my eldest son comes over to me having returned from the shower block and asks if he can take his younger brother to see Santa in his grotto because it was free. I glanced over at the caravan and said yes. After all, I could see the caravan and, as I say, nothing was really suspicious about it given our location. They both went over and I began to cook breakfast in the caravan. My husband was showering, so I was alone at the moment. About 5 minutes passed when I heard my eldest shouting for me in the distance. I come out of the caravan to see him barrelling towards me, screaming my name frantically. "They've got Joseph, Mum! They took him!" I didn't need to ask who. I look up to see this stout middle-aged guy attaching the caravan to a van quickly. I didn't even think. I've never run so fast in all my life as I'm shouting for help. This guy hears me and, in a panic, jumps into the passenger side of this van and it just smoked out of the field, leaving the caravan behind. I ran over and the caravan door was unlocked and I found my son chained to one of the walls by his waist. The caravan wasn't a Santa's grotto at all. It was just a mess with handcuffs attached to the walls and rope and tape on the side. I immediately informed the farmer, who told us he had no idea it was there and he called the police. Thankfully, because the trailer was left behind, we caught the 2 guys a few days later on Christmas Eve and me and both my sons had to give evidence, which was traumatic in itself for my young lads. The guy who was attaching the trailer to the van was sentenced to 15 years as his DNA was the bulk of what was identified in the caravan. His driver and co-conspirator was sentenced to 8 years. I wouldn't deem this a victory. IMO, they should be left to rot, but I'm just glad my boys were okay. Needless to say, we cut the holiday short. Hey guys, it's Brothers Jackson here. I really hope you enjoyed the stories today. 5 true scary stories for a cold winter's night. If you did, don't forget to thumb up, and if you're not already, subscribe below and click that bell notification to be notified whenever a new video is uploaded. Don't forget to comment below any ideas you have for future videos, and don't forget to follow me on social media, on Instagram, on Tumblr, on Facebook, just to keep you abreast of any other things that I might be doing. And as always, thanks for watching.